With Caitlin Clark injured, the WNBA will be reliant on their other stars to carry the league. I'm not just talking about ratings. I'm not just talking about attendance. The WNBA will be reliant on their other stars to maintain the interest of the mainstream. With Angel Reese being the only player with mainstream name recognition, most of the pressure, it is going to be on her to perform. And we have plenty of evidence that proves Angel Reese is not qualified to carry the league.
The WNBA world just exploded 2 minutes ago, and Angel Reese is at the center of the most devastating fan revolt in women's basketball history. What started as whispers of disappointment has erupted into a full-scale boycott that's leaving arenas empty, ticket sales plummeting, and one of the league's supposed rising stars facing the harsh reality that fame without respect is just noise. This isn't just about basketball anymore. This is about loyalty, jealousy, and the brutal consequences when fans decide they've had enough. Picture this. Caitlin Clark, the Golden Girl, who single-handedly dragged the WNBA from obscurity into prime time, is lying on a training table somewhere, her season over, her body broken. Meanwhile, Angel Reese is discovering that without Clark to fuel the rivalry that made her relevant, she's just another player in a league that's hemorrhaging viewers faster than a punctured basketball loses.
Reese under pressure. When you think about it, there have been so many classic songs written about the WNBA dump. Obviously, Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie, which directly applies to what Angel Reese and her colleagues are going through right now. An immense amount of pressure to carry this dump of a league while Caitlin Clark...
And Chicago Sky fans, they're not just staying home. They're actively organizing to make sure everyone knows exactly who they blame for this disaster. The writing was on the wall from the very beginning, but nobody wanted to read it. When Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA, she didn't just bring her incredible shooting and court vision. She brought something the league had been desperately searching for: mainstream attention. Television networks were suddenly bidding for broadcasting rights. Arenas that used to echo with empty seats were selling out months in advance. Young girls were wearing Clark jerseys to school, and their parents were actually watching.
Last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlin Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail for what's
women's basketball on weeknight television. But with Clark's meteoric rise came something uglier, something that would ultimately poison the well. Angel Reese, talented in her own right, but lacking that indefinable star quality that makes casual fans care, found herself cast in the role of Clark's rival. The problem wasn't that she accepted the role, it was how she chose to play it. What should have been a competitive rivalry between two elite athletes became something far more personal, far more destructive. The targeting began almost immediately. Clark's rookie season was supposed to be a celebration of fresh talent.
Now, what little girl wants to grow up and play in a league where you're targeted like that? How do you sit here and profess and demand that everyone take women's sports seriously when you can't even take it seriously enough to not act like a junior high queen on the court? It's stupid. That's so dumb. It looks like a
entering the league. Instead, it became a masterclass in how jealousy can transform competitive spirit into something genuinely dangerous. The statistics don't lie. Clark absorbed 20% of all flagrant fouls committed in the entire league during her first season. Think about that for a moment. One player out of dozens was on the receiving end of one in every 5 intentionally rough fouls. That's not coincidence. That's not even intense competition. That's systematic targeting. And where did most of these fouls come from? Angel Reese and her Chicago Sky.
And last year, I noticed how much it was just Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark was taking all the hits. Caitlin Clark was taking all the abuse. But this year they've added Sophie Cunningham. She gets more flagrant fouls on her than anybody in the league besides Caitlin Clark. And Aaliyah Boston, she's been taking hits as well. But the worst thing is the consistency. So they don't call flagrant fouls, or most of the time, Caitlin Clark could be held for an entire game at a time. They don't call fouls. They don't call
teammates who seem to take perverse pleasure in treating Clark less like a competitor and more like a problem to be solved through physical intimidation. Game after game, fans watched Clark get shoved, grabbed, and knocked off balance, only to see cameras cut to Reese celebrating these moments like they were personal victories. It was basketball at its ugliest, and everyone could see it happening in real time. The league, drunk on the revenue Clark was generating, looked the other way. Networks were paying
all this time trying to get respect for your league, and then you do bitch stuff. The only B's out there I see are the B's that are being dramatic about Caitlin Clark. That's all I see. They try so long to get respect for women's basketball, and then they treat it like a junior high school girl's locker room. Junior high school girl antics on the court. Instead of playing the game, they got to be drama because they're jealous. Instead of letting their
for the privilege of broadcasting her games. Arenas were expanding their capacity just to accommodate the demand. Merchandise sales were through the roof. The WNBA was finally experiencing the kind of mainstream success it had dreamed about for decades, and they weren't about to let a little rough play derail the money train. But bodies have limits, and Clark's was approaching hers. The quad strain that first appeared in training camp should have been a warning sign. Instead, it was treated as an inconvenience, something to be managed rather than properly healed. When it escalated into groin problems, the response was more tape, more painkillers, more day-to-day evaluations that somehow always resulted in Clark being rushed back onto the court. By July, the inevitable happened. During what should have been a routine game against the Connecticut Sun.
I mean, it's a gut punch that basically encompasses an entire season of them. The Fever have lost so many players to injury, but obviously none bigger than Clark. And there was such a wait for this second season after her magnificent rookie season. And then, you know, the anticipation of her possibly coming back, only for that not to happen, takes a lot of air out of the room, obviously takes a lot of energy out of the fans, and is a devastating blow for not just the Fever.
Clark's overstressed, underprotected body finally said enough. The groin injury that had been simmering for months exploded into something that would end her season. As she limped off the court, clutching her side, millions of fans felt something break that had nothing to do with muscles or tendons. It was trust. Trust in a league that had just sacrificed its brightest star on the altar of short-term profits and unchecked rivalry. The official announcement from the Indiana Fever tried to put the best possible spin on disaster. Team officials spoke about Clark's dedication, her work ethic, her determination to return. But fans could read between the lines. Their favorite player, the woman who had made them care about women's basketball, was done for the year because the league had failed to protect her from players who cared more about knocking her down than lifting the game up. And then Angel Reese opened her mouth. In what will go down as one of the most tone-deaf responses in sports history, Reese chose Clark's darkest moment to elevate herself. Instead of showing even basic empathy for a fellow competitor who had just seen her season destroyed, Reese doubled down on the narrative that had made her famous, that she was just as important to the league's success as Clark, that the WNBA didn't need to rely on just one star. I'll look back in 20 years and be like, yeah.
Clark, a two-time All-Star and the 2024 WNBA Rookie of the Year, has been sidelined suffering a right groin injury during the Fever's 87-77 win over the Connecticut Sun on July 15th. If you guys remember that game, Caitlin Clark put the team on her back in the winding minutes to give the Indiana Fever that lead. Clark also suffered a bone bruise at a later date during her recovery.
The reason why we're watching women's basketball is not just because of one person, Reese declared, pointedly refusing to even say Clark's name. It's because of me, too. The arrogance was breathtaking, the timing was cruel, and the fan reaction was swift and merciless. Social media erupted in ways that sports controversy rarely achieves. This wasn't just criticism. It was pure, concentrated fury from fans who felt like they had watched someone kick their hero while she was down. The backlash came from all directions. Longtime WNBA supporters who accused Reese of classlessness, casual fans who saw her comments as proof that she was more interested in clout than competition, and Clark supporters who had finally found their villain.
So hard throughout this time, doing everything possible to recover and return to the court, but ultimately, time is not on our side, said Indiana Fever COO and GM Amber Cox. While we will continue working with Caitlin and provide her with every resource we have available, there is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return, and her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. We are looking forward to having her back at full strength to start the 2026 season. Clark appeared in 13 games during the regular season, averaging 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, while helping lead the team to the 2025 WNBA Commissioners.
But the real test wasn't on Twitter or Instagram. It was in the arenas and television ratings. And Angel Reese was about to discover just how much of the league's newfound popularity really belonged to her. The numbers were devastating. When Reese got her chance to headline the secondary league Unrivaled, the viewing figures told a story that no amount of bravado could spin. While mainstream media tried to paint 221,000 viewers as a success, anyone with basic math skills could see it for what it was. A catastrophic failure that proved Clark hadn't just been important to the WNBA's growth. She had been essential to it. Back in Chicago, the Sky's own attendance figures revealed an even more
what Caitlin wrote. I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. This has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way fans continue to show up for me in the Fever brought me so much joy and important perspective. I'm so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through the adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot in the playoffs.
Truth. During Clark's rookie year, Sky Games had averaged around 8,700 fans, with capacity hovering near 88%. Respectable numbers, but nothing that suggested Reese was driving ticket sales on her own merit. The harsh reality was becoming impossible to ignore. Angel Reese had been riding Caitlin Clark's coattails to relevance, and without Clark to fuel the rivalry narrative, she was just another talented player in a league full of talented players who couldn't fill arenas. The market collapse that followed Clark's injury announcement was swift and brutal. Tickets that had been selling for over $200 plummeted to barely $60 overnight. All-Star Weekend, which had been positioned as Clark's homecoming showcase in Indiana, became a desperate scramble to manage refunds and maintain any semblance of interest. Resale sites were flooded with fans trying to unload seats they had been excited about for months. Television networks.
My inside sources are telling me that Mama Reese demands free tickets. The Chicago Bravado, they happily oblige because they're also giving away free tickets to the other dozen or so people that show up to the
that had gambled primetime slots on Clark's star power watched viewership numbers crater. Sponsors who had jumped aboard the Clark bandwagon suddenly found themselves associated with half-empty arenas and declining interest. The economic ecosystem that had been built around one player's magnetism was collapsing in real time, and everyone could see who was responsible for both its creation and its destruction. Chicago Sky fans, already frustrated with their team's role in targeting the league's biggest star, reached their breaking point with Reese's post-injury comment.
Angel Reese is now quoted as saying, "I'll look back in 20 years and be like, yeah, the reason why we're watching women's basketball is not just because of one person." She refuses to say Caitlin Clark's name. "It's because of me too, and I want you to realize."
What started as individual decisions to skip games became organized boycotts. Social media campaigns emerged with surgical precision, complete with refund screenshots and coordinated messaging designed to hit the team where it hurt most: attendance numbers and revenue. The boycotts weren't just about empty seats. They were about sending a message that fans had standards, that they wouldn't support players who seemed to celebrate their rivals' misfortune. For the first time in her professional career, Angel Reese was experiencing the consequences of her choices without the safety net of...
Sorry, young lady. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody would be watching the WNBA additionally for you. This is all about Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is bringing the money to the game, the planes to the game, the TV viewership. The WNBA is on fire because of Caitlin
Clark's star power to provide cover. The league's response to this crisis revealed just how deep the institutional failure had gone. Instead of acknowledging their role in allowing Clark to be systematically targeted, officials doubled down on damage control. The same commissioner who had been silent while Clark absorbed unprecedented abuse was now scrambling to explain why playoff attendance was plummeting and television partners were reconsidering their investments. But fans weren't interested in explanations anymore. They wanted accountability. They wanted better officiating that would protect star players instead of allowing them to be treated.
Her rookie year with the Chicago Bravado, the numbers were eerily similar. It was around 88% capacity. Angel Reese averaged around 8,700 a game. Going into 2025, Angel Reese was the only star in the secondary dump unrivaled. For the first time in her career, it was her opportunity to prove that she could draw. It was her opportunity to prove that she did not need Caitlin Clark to draw an audience. What was the end result? Unrivaled averaged 221,000 viewers. For reasons unknown, the mainstream media called this a resounding success. The rest of us called it
Like tackling dummies. They wanted leadership that understood the difference between competitive intensity and malicious targeting. Most of all, they wanted honesty instead of the hollow corporate speak that had characterized the league's response to this disaster. As playoff season approaches, the WNBA finds itself in an impossible position. The player who had driven their recent success is sidelined indefinitely. The player who had positioned herself as Clark's equal has proven incapable of generating even a fraction of the same interest. And fans who had finally been convinced to care about women's basketball are walking away in droves, disgusted by what they see as the league's complicity in destroying its own golden goose. Angel Reese may have wanted to be the face of the WNBA, but she's learning that fame without respect is a hollow victory. As Chicago Sky games play out in front of increasingly empty seats, as her social media comments generate more criticism than praise, as the league she claimed to carry struggles to maintain relevance without its biggest star, the harsh mathematics of professional sports are delivering their verdict. The WNBA will survive this crisis because sports leagues always do. Players will retire, new stars will emerge, and eventually this moment will become just another chapter in basketball.
We've got Colin Cowherd saying, you know what? Guess what I didn't talk about on my show this year? The WNBA. Guess why? He just come out and said it yesterday. Because Caitlin Clark was not playing. That's why. He said, I led my show, my biggest, largest national sports radio show in the country. I led my show with Caitlin Clark 6 times last year. I mean, you don't lead a show with anybody unless they can draw.
Basketball history. But for Angel Reese, the damage may be permanent. She wanted to prove she didn't need Caitlin Clark to be relevant. Chicago Sky fans are making sure she gets that chance, and the early returns suggest it's not going the way she hoped. Sometimes the biggest victories in sports happen off the court, and right now, the fans are winning decisively.
The ticket prices. The demand fell off a cliff. And it's not just the on-court product that suffers without 22, number 22, Caitlin Clark. The entire weekend's economic opportunities have felt the fallout.